Stocks finished lower on Friday. Well, most of the indices, the Russell actually ended up managing to eke out a gain, as just concerns over Trump and Fed really just sort of outweighed, from sort of mixed to healthy earnings and economic numbers. Um, Look, we saw Broadcom and Micron continue to head higher just on the back of those, I would say, the TSM results a couple of days ago. We saw, Palantir, Salesforce, Adobe, and ServiceNow, those monetizers of AI, continue to head lower. Some of them having their worst week in in probably a year or so. And Intel dropped away just a touch as well. It was a fairly mixed night. I mean, let's face it, looking at that market map. And you saw some of the banks bounce back a little bit. PNC, one of the financials, it had earnings which were 25% revenue, or sorry, profit, surge in profit driven by loan and deal making growth. Whereas Regions Financial missed expectations. So we've got a pretty big week coming up. But just to give you a quick look here, we do tend to correlate a little bit better to the Russell, the broader index here in Australia. It managed to eke out a gain, one of the best continuous runs in the Russell I'm hearing since the 80s, but I haven't fact checked that. But yeah, you've seen the Nasdaq just drift lower, the S&P and the Dow as well. The Nasdaq the worst for the week, and even some of the Asian indices heading a little bit lower as well. So the ASX was up a half. That material sector very much helping us at the moment, and obviously, the banking sector helping us somewhat as well. In terms of commodities, gold and silver drifted lower. It had a bit of a breather overall, probably fairly healthy. Copper and platinum as well, drifting 2.6 and 3.85. They sound like big moves, and I say drifting because these things have been extraordinarily volatile in the last, over the last few weeks, and they've just given up a few percent gain. Whereas they've been on some pretty hot runs overall, and uranium being one of the only ones that's continued to head higher. Coal having a pretty good week, realistically, and the Aussie dollar, US dollar, and things not doing a hell of a lot there. We saw iron ore just drift off just a touch, but sort of still, not a bad couple of weeks for them. Look, we're going to be looking into this week. We've got Netflix on Tuesday. We've got Martin Luther King Day today. We will have some figures out of China today as well. A big whack of numbers there. GDP, employment, retail sales, industrial production, all coming out in one blitz. But yeah, in terms of corporate news in the US, Netflix, 3M, probably not a bad one to maybe have a bit of a look at. Johnson and Johnson, Charles Schwab, the biggest broker, or one of the biggest brokers. Halliburton, GE Aerospace on Thursday, Intel and Procter and Gamble on Thursday as well. Freeport McMoran and Intuitive Surgical. Freeport McMoran being copper, Intuitive Surgical being one of those AI automation and robotics plays that we quite like, on the Thursday as well. In terms of what we've got here in Australia, we've got employment numbers on Thursday. The market will be praying for some mildly softer numbers just to really reinforce the fact that we're not going to have just to take those stupid rate hike cuts off the calls off the table. Final GDP in the US as well. Final's probably not going to move the needle, although with the way that the US numbers and the BLS has been working lately, there may be some form of movement there. But overall, I think we'll have a pretty quiet start to the week, and we've got Davos as well, the World Conference. There are a few European nations talking about retaliatory sanctions against the US for talks about Greenland. If you want a bit more of an in-detailed chat on Greenland, have a look at our podcast. That was our main focus topic on Friday, Bulls versus Bears. You can follow us at MPC Markets on YouTube or Spotify or whatever, and you can find us there. Kai Chen goes into a little bit of an in-depth into the Greenland situation and why they're looking at it and what sort of significance it has. Probably better to go and have a look in that. Not really the forum this morning to be taking you down the rabbit hole with that. But overall, we started to see more and more people probably come back from from holidays in the US after Martin Luther King Day. And those earnings start to heat up, and we're going to have the likes of Google and Microsoft, etc. Will start to report earnings next week. Nvidia won't be until February, but you'll have a fair bit more corporate news coming up in the next week as well. We did have a few small notes. Polynovo had a really positive announcement this morning saying that sales were going really well, I'm just going to grab this now, just to quickly run you through. NextDC had a development application approved near the M4 in Melbourne, and City Chic reported preliminary first half revenue at 69 million. And had some volatile earnings in terms of their US US margins started to expand a little bit, and but there'll be some movement there as well this morning overall. So if you want to have a look at our webinars, we had a really good response to our market outlook last week. Which was on the Thursday. You can go to mpcmarkets.com.au/webinars and just register there. And once you've registered, you can get access to our last 4 webinars over the last sort of few months. Hyperscaling AI was extremely popular. You can get that on demand. The security super cycle on defence stocks, AI automation, robotics, future. Was one of the last ones we did last year, and the market outlook is the first one for this year as well. You can get them all on demand if you register at mpcmarkets.com.au/webinars. If you want to know more about, we've got obviously got our morning call webinar or podcast, which we're listening to right now. We've also got Bulls versus Bears, our weekly, and today we're going to have Finn Judell and Richard Nader do our global alpha podcast focusing on US stocks. You can follow on Spotify, you can follow on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Just search at MPC Markets. Hope everyone has a great day, and we will speak again